He was rich, influential, and used to getting everything he wanted. When Dominic Stone entered a room, it wasn't just about presence, it was about power. It followed him like a loyal shadow, whispered his name before he even spoke. People noticed. People obeyed. Some admired him. Most feared him. And for good reason. Dominic had built an empire from absolutely nothing. No silver spoon, no family name that opened doors, just hunger. That feral, unforgiving hunger that burns behind a man's eyes and turns dreams into concrete. From sleeping in shelters as a teen to owning private islands in the Caribbean, his story was one of ruthless determination. By 38, his name was inked on Forbes covers, boardrooms bowed to him, and women, well, they came and went like seasons. Nothing ever lasted. Nothing needed to. He owned luxury resorts in 10 countries, tech startups that disrupted entire industries, even a discreet political consulting firm that, unofficially, influenced outcomes. He didn't apologize for his wealth or his ambition. He had learned early that the world didn't hand you anything, you had to take it. Still, for all his possessions, yachts, jets, art, and estates, there was a coldness that had slowly begun to creep into his bones. He never called it loneliness. He never admitted he didn't trust a soul. But deep down, in those silent nights high above Manhattan's glowing skyline, something echoed within him. Not quite emptiness, but something close. Something hollow. But he pushed the thought away, as he always did. It was a rainy Thursday in May when everything began to shift. The Stone Foundation was hosting an exclusive charity gala at the Metropolitan Tower. The invite-only event featured rare artwork up for auction, gourmet food by a Michelin-starred chef, and a guest list that could make a senator feel like a nobody. Everyone was dressed to impress. Diamond necklaces, velvet tuxedos, whispered deals made behind champagne flutes. Dominic arrived late, as always. His entrance was a performance in itself. Black suit, crisp shirt, no tie, he didn't need one. Flanked by 2 silent bodyguards, he walked through the grand hall with an ease born of knowing the world bent around him. People parted like water. Men tried to engage him in conversation about mergers or markets. Women angled for a smile, a glance, anything. He offered nods, practiced smiles. But he was barely listening. His attention wasn't on the art, or the guests. He was bored, and Dominic Stone hated boredom. That was when he saw her. She wasn't surrounded by admirers. She wasn't holding a flute of champagne or flashing diamonds. She stood near an abstract piece of art, a chaotic swirl of reds and blacks, examining it with quiet intensity. She wore a green dress. Simple, flowing, no designer label he recognized. Her natural curls framed her face, unbothered by fashion trends. She looked out of place, yet completely comfortable. What struck him wasn't her beauty, though she was beautiful. It was her stillness, her unbotheredness, like she was immune to the buzzing energy of wealth and ambition around her. Like she saw through it all. He walked over, curiosity piqued. "You seem interested in this piece," he said, standing beside her, hands in his pockets. She didn't look at him right away. "It's honest," she said finally. "Raw. Doesn't pretend to be something it's not." He raised an eyebrow. "That's rare around here." She turned to him, eyes clear and direct. "Especially among people who are pretending to care about causes while sipping $5,000 wine." Dominic chuckled, surprised. "You're not here to schmooze. I'm here for the art. And the kids it'll help. You." He hesitated. No one ever asked him that. "I funded this event." "Figures." He tilted his head. "That a compliment?" "Not even close." He laughed again, a real laugh this time. She was blunt, unfiltered. She didn't flinch. Most people tried to impress him. She wasn't trying anything. "I'm Dominic," he offered, extending his hand. "I know," she replied. But she didn't take his hand. He blinked. "I'm Elara. That's a beautiful name. I don't like flattery. You don't like a lot of things, do you?" "I just don't like masks. And your mask is very polished." She turned and walked away before he could respond. And for the first time in over a decade, Dominic was speechless. He watched her go, something inside him shifting. Not anger. Not bruised ego. Intrigue. Pure, electric curiosity. Who was this woman? Over the next hour, he found himself scanning the room for glimpses of her. She wasn't fawning over billionaires or taking selfies with celebrities. She talked to the waitstaff, joked with the violinist, even helped a nervous artist fix their name tag. She moved through the event like she wasn't trying to be noticed, but couldn't help being noticed. He didn't speak to her again that night. She left early, slipping out quietly while most guests were still boasting about auctions. He watched her go, lips pressed together, unsettled by how much he suddenly wanted to know more. Back at his penthouse later that night, he stood at the glass window, a tumbler of bourbon in hand, the city stretching endlessly below. But his thoughts were elsewhere. Elara. There was something about her. Something unshakable. The next morning, he walked into his office and asked his assistant for a full report. Natalie, efficient as ever, returned 2 hours later. Elara James, she began, placing a folder on his desk. Curator at an independent gallery in Brooklyn. Former art history professor. Runs community programs for inner-city kids. Grew up in foster care. No social media. No major scandals. She's clean. Dominic opened the file, studying the photo inside. It was her, smiling next to a mural she helped fund. Children surrounded her, laughing. It was candid. Real. Not posed. Not perfect. She's different, he murmured. Natalie tilted her head. You want me to set up a meeting? He considered. No, not yet. Just send her flowers. Say thank you for attending. 2 hours later, the flowers were returned. With a handwritten note, I'm not impressed by roses from strangers. Try sincerity next time. He smiled. The note was now on his desk, framed in glass. The next day, he sent a painting, rare, valued at over $100,000. One of her favorites, according to his research. She donated it to a children's hospital. He sent an invitation to a private dinner at one of the most exclusive rooftop restaurants in Manhattan. She declined with a simple message: I don't dine with people who assume my time can be bought. 3 strikes. And yet, Dominic wasn't frustrated. He was fascinated. This woman wasn't playing his game. She had flipped the board entirely. So he began to shift too. No more gifts. No more moves based on power or money. He started showing up at small gallery openings she supported, without fanfare or entourage. Just him. He listened, really listened, to the artists. He asked questions. He bought paintings, but anonymously, through a friend, so she wouldn't suspect his involvement. One Saturday, he found her at a children's art workshop she hosted in a local community center. She wore jeans, a paint-stained t-shirt, and a smile that lit up the room more than any chandelier ever could. He walked in, unsure of how he'd be received. She saw him, raised an eyebrow, but didn't send him away. You here to actually help? She asked, or just watch from the shadows? I brought pizza. The kids cheered. She sighed, trying not to smile. Fine, but you're washing brushes after. He stayed for hours. Got paint on his hands. Laughed with children. Sat on the floor. No cameras. No assistants. Just Dom. And she watched him, carefully. Like she was trying to see who he really was underneath all that legacy and leather. That night, as he walked back to his car alone, paint still smudged on his shirt, he felt something strange and warm swell in his chest. He wasn't used to it. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't about getting what he wanted. It was about earning something real. And Elara James, she might just be the first thing in his life he couldn't buy, but desperately wanted to keep. Dominic found himself checking his phone more than usual. Not for business deals or news alerts, but for the possibility of a message from her. From Elara. He'd never been that kind of man before, the type who waited, who wondered, who hoped. But something about her had rewired the rhythm of his thoughts. She'd become the thread in his mind he couldn't stop pulling. She hadn't texted, of course. Elara didn't play those games. She was elusive, not out of arrogance, but because she guarded her peace like a fortress. Dominic didn't blame her. In fact, he admired it. He just wasn't used to being the one knocking on doors without being invited in. The next few weeks, he found ways to cross paths with her. Genuinely, not forcefully. If he heard she was helping to paint a mural on the side of an old library in Queens, he showed up. Quietly. No suits, no security. Just jeans, sneakers, and a willingness to hold a ladder. The first time he did, Elara gave him a look, half amused, half suspicious, but she didn't send him away. They painted together for hours that day. She didn't ask him questions about his empire, and he didn't offer details. They just talked. About music. About what art meant to kids who had nothing. About how hope sometimes came in the form of color splashed on brick walls. He listened to her laugh, raw and free, and realized it was fast becoming his favorite sound. By the third time he joined her for one of her community projects, she finally handed him a brush without asking what he was doing there. About time, she teased. Was starting to think you just came for the free pizza. I come for you, he said before thinking. She paused, looked at him, then smiled, just a little. You're persistent, she said. I'm learning how to show up. Without a checkbook. It was the first compliment she gave him. Still, progress was slow. Not because Elara was playing hard to get, but because she didn't want to be gotten. She wanted to be seen. Understood. And Dominic knew, if he rushed this, if he treated her like a challenge to conquer, he'd lose her. So, he slowed down. He started writing again, something he hadn't done since college. Not business memos. Not legal documents. Just thoughts. Journals. Sometimes he'd mail them to her, just pages, folded and slipped into envelopes. No return address. Just his handwriting and pieces of his mind. He wrote about being 13 and hungry and angry. About sleeping on subway benches in winter. About the first time he lied on a job application just to be taken seriously. About how every suit he wore still felt like armor, not comfort. About how the silence in his penthouse echoed louder than sirens. Elara read every one. She never replied directly, but when he saw her again, her eyes were softer. She touched his arm longer. When he spoke, she really listened. One evening, she invited him to dinner, not at a restaurant, but her place. Brooklyn. Second floor walk up. A cozy, slightly messy apartment that smelled like cinnamon and acrylic paint. Books. Stacked on windowsills. Records instead of Spotify. Plants that looked like they had names. Dominic brought wine. She made roasted vegetables and pasta. They sat on the floor instead of the couch, plates in their laps, candles flickering on a chipped coffee table. This is the most relaxed I've felt in months, he admitted, twirling pasta on his fork. That's because no one here wants something from you, she said gently. No press. No board members. No expectations. He looked around. The scratched floorboards. The tiny balcony. The photos taped to the fridge. It's not about the money, is it? It never was, she said. But you spent so long building walls with your money, you forgot how to knock on doors with your heart. He nodded slowly, her words cutting deep, but not unkindly. She didn't say things to hurt. She said them to wake something up in him. Later that night, as they sat close, knees brushing, music humming in the background, he reached for her hand. She let him. And when he kissed her, slow, unsure, almost reverent, she didn't pull away. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't cinematic. It was better. It was real. The next morning, they walked to a cafe near her apartment. No drivers. No cameras. Just them. They drank coffee on the sidewalk, watching the city pass them by. Dominic couldn't remember the last time he'd felt invisible in public, and liked it. But with every step forward, part of him still wrestled with doubt. Could someone like him, Battered by capitalism, sharpened by control, really be soft enough to stay in Elara's world. And could she live in his? She helped him find answers. Not by preaching, but by doing. She brought him to classrooms where kids drew hope with crayons. To nursing homes where elderly women taught painting classes in exchange for stories. She dragged him to poetry slams where teens screamed truth into microphones. Places where no one cared about his net worth. And he began to care less, too. At first, his board noticed. Dominic skipping meetings. Dominic turning